Walk, walk. There are so many things going on around. You must take heed. It's been written and prophesied about, so you must believe. Not everything that glitters is gold. Pay attention as it's been told. Join us every Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, with Brother Yusuf as he tackles and breaks down current events, current news, and politics, and the Islamic Ummah. Please join us, streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnahfollowers.
Okay, in alhamdulillah, wa salat, wa salam ala wa rasulullah. I want to welcome everybody back to our new series with Brother Youssef on the Muslim 2.0. Oh, yeah, it's a lot happening. And last week we focused on the American Muslim 2.0. Okay, and I got a lot of reviews from your shorts, and I got a couple of bans too. I see on YouTube too. They keep banning a couple of the shorts. I keep trying to get out there. Whenever you guys see the shorts, you see 500, 600, 700. Then you will look at one and it only has 20 views. Those are the ones that social media keeps banning for whatever reasons, because there's nothing that violates, their contract. I don't know why they keep banning it. But alhamdulillah, for those of you, please feel free to share the shorts. I get emails all the time asking, is it okay to share the shorts on your platforms? Yes. Okay. And tonight, Brother Yusuf, where's my moderators? And tonight, Brother Youssef is going to continue with his discussion of the Muslim 2.0. And with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Brother Youssef.
But tonight we're going to continue. Last week we focused on particularly American racial history and division, and how you see a lot of these people I'm talking about have adopted these causes. A lot of them come from immigrant backgrounds. They're trying to take advantage of some of the black eyes of American history to create division and grift. Ultimately, grift, as I highlighted, was a way of making money by creating a false boogeyman, to then basically the solution is to give them money, platform these people. Oh, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about bettering yourself. Don't worry about being a better. It's these people's fault. You need to focus on those people. And we talked about that a lot last week. Tonight, we're going to go on and how to spot them. I'm going to break down different classifications of these people and give you some tips and techniques to know when you see them on social media, how to know who they are and how to know are they genuine or not. So we're going to outline all of that tonight. So we're going to begin, as we always do, with the opening news. Now, last week in our I always enjoy the comment sections where you guys get to ask questions. In fact, moving forward, I think we're going to do a lot more of that. I think we can even do a whole show where I'll go through current events in the beginning. We'll just spend half the show just letting you guys ask things and let's have discussions. I think that's very beneficial. You may have a question in your mind, you want to ask it, write it down, be prepared, and do it. And I'm thinking in the future we'll start doing a lot more where just Q&A types, like what Sister Layla does with Islam, but with me, we're going to do it more with current events, geopolitics, what's going on in the world. So last week, we had a caller or a commenter who had talked about femicide. And I have been talking about infanticide during the lecture, and I misunderstood, and I commented in a response on infanticide, which we know from Islamic history what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's premise or statements were on that. But actually the person was asking about femicide, and in fact was blaming Islam for what he or she believed was a major problem, that Islam had wrecked their homeland in Africa. So when I watched back, I saw that. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to open up this week because we don't duck anything here. As Muslims, when you're on the truth, you don't hide. Only those who are defending lies feel the need to, you watch when a politician gets asked a question and they spend 20 minutes dodging it. Well, in Islam, we don't do that. Any true Muslim, you're on the side of the truth. Anytime someone says something like this, all it's going to take 15, 20 minutes and you're going to find the truth. So let's look at real quick some femicide numbers. So let's start off. The number one country in Africa is South Africa. They are number one in femicide. The femicide rate in South Africa is 5 times higher than the global average. In fact, it's so bad. In South Africa, it's estimated a woman is killed every 4 hours. So you have a femicide problem in a nation I just highlighted, number one in the continent. But yet, is it a Muslim nation? Does it have a huge Muslim population? I think we know the answer to that. Another hotbed for this in Africa, because that's what the caller was referencing, was Kenya, where an average of 8 women die per month due to femicide. Egypt, now this is, we're going to represent the truth here. Egypt has, as a Muslim nation, has 113 murdered due to domestic abuse, and a total of 165 total in the calendar year 2022. Now, India, some sources have it as high as 25,000 newly married women are killed or maimed in what they call dowry disputes. Now, when people in the West hear dowry, they immediately think Islam, but actually, no, Hinduism has this also as well. A lot of these, again, the vast majority of these are Hindu-related killings. So we're seeing here, there are a couple of Muslim nations on the list, but the vast majority of countries in Africa or globally where you are having a problem with females being murdered, they are not Muslim nations. Which what this tells us is that this has nothing to do with religion. This is a cultural problem. Because in Islam, obviously, anyone knows that this is haram. This is not something that is sanctioned. There's no precedent in Islamic history for justification of this. But these are the things they do. You know, Islam thrives on lies, and you'll hear all that stuff and the misrepresentations. And of course, these people are what I call bomb throwers. A bomb thrower is someone who can sit behind a camera, never face an audience, and just throw those bombs out there. Islam is the most violent in the world. Muslim men rape more than anyone else. And you don't ever have a chance to cross-examine them. You don't have a chance to actually put the lens on them and put their statement to the fire. And what we just did is that. And we found out that the majority of these nations are not Muslim nations at all. Now, were there some Muslim nations that are? Yes, but they're not the majority. So again, we'll put that one, to rest once and for all. Now, back to the domestic news front. A lot of big things happening here this week. We're going to get to Trump, here in a minute, and what his comments regarding the Palestinian situation. But first, we have, again, going to our illegal situation, which we've covered over the last month. You have the traitorous mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, just asked for $1.1 billion. The reason I bring up illegals all the time is because you're going to see these Muslim 2.0s that I'm going to talk about later constantly defending the illegals, constantly encouraging this, constantly saying they're our allies and they're the greatest strength and America's a nation of immigrants and blah, blah, blah. We know the rhetoric. $1.1 billion for what? To house and care for them, including laundry services. They were billing New York taxpayers $700 a night on hotel rooms to house people who have no business being here. Let's just compare that to what happened in Hawaii, where you had the massive fire there. You had what happened in Los Angeles. You had Asheville. And the Americans in those areas were offered what? $700 total for the fact that there was incompetent responses from those local governments that their taxes paid for. Fire hydrants without water, no defense strategies, all intentional sabotage, and yet here's $700. But the illegals, $700 a night for hotel services and cleaning them and bringing them food and catering and all these other things. Now, if you're a New Yorker, this should make you sick to your stomach because this isn't just New York. I'm just using it as an example. This is all the major cities in this country. Imagine what we could do with $1.1 billion. You take 5 years, take $1.1 billion for 5 years, put it in every single impoverished community, and imagine what you could stimulate. Imagine the growth. Imagine the homelessness you could end, the people who are on drugs that we could clean up. But again, they don't want that. They want the chaos, obviously. Now, the $700 a night, obviously this is money laundering. The joke's on us again. If I want to go out and get $700 a night room at a hotel, you could probably get a pretty nice one. A lot of these places, if you see them, they're not worth $700 a night. Obviously, this is a kickback of some kind. You dig deep, you'll surely find the corruption. But again, it should just anger us to no end. What is happening to our nation? And then you see these 2.0 Muslim so-called scholars and imams and leaders consistently pandering to these illegals, saying, when we talked about Butch Ware last week, doing in fact just that all over his Instagram, calling for unity with these people who are bankrupting this nation, destroying our quality of life, most of them men, no job skills, the end, Now back to Palestine. So we had some big stuff going on this week. Donald Trump stated if the hostages are not returned by 12 o'clock noon tomorrow, the ceasefire is off. So this is a common trick here. I mean, who determines how many hostages there are? Are there exact figures? Do we have exact names and dates and locations? Because remember, they used this same strategy with the war on terror. All you simply had to do was go, there's terrorists in there, there's terrorists in there, oh, there's a terrorist over here. And it was justification to preemptively attack anyone, any location at any time. Same thing here. So who's going to determine how many hostages? The Zionists? Those honest, moral, upstanding human beings that we chronicled for 9 hours in our Palestinian series? Are they going to be the ones that are going to tell us accurately when all these hostages supposedly are returned? So this is very, very dangerous. And I started digging into it this week when I had some moments. And there's already plans now. And if you watch my Palestine series, I predicted this. It was as clear as day. I mean, it's like predicting rain when you see the clouds in the sky, that they want to send these people to England, Ireland, Spain, other parts of Europe. That's always been the plan. Standard business for the Zionists. They ship their enemies to the West, putting further strain on our resources, our economy, our quality of life. Also throwing these refugees out, real refugees, away from their homes. I mean, if there's any people who are true refugees, it's unfortunately our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And they're now going to just be thrown on Western countries who are already in massive amounts of debt, housing costs and rent through the roof. And the Zionists are going to clear out, the Middle East, as always been planned, of getting these people gone. Now, also, if you watched my series, you saw the influence and the impact and how instrumental the British were in fact bringing this about. So isn't it ironic that the UK is the one that got the ball rolling? They are the ones that mandated. They're the ones with the Sykes-Picot agreement that we talked about. They're the one with the Balfour Declaration and all these things. And now they're going to be going there. If you're British, I mean, you can't hate your government enough. I mean, you really can't, because your government helps, along with the Zionists, created this problem, displaced these people, stole a part of their land, now wants to steal the rest of it. And then they're telling you, oh, yeah, by the way, your tax dollars are going to pay for this. So your taxes are going to get raised to pay for people that we funded with your tax dollars to steal their land and displace them. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And I feel sorry for the average British citizen. They don't know about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. They don't know about the Balfour Declaration or mandated Palestine. And yet they're going to be the ones, as usual, that bear the cost for this. Not the Zionists, not the treasonous politicians that brought them into this. And you add 500,000 more people to the UK or to Ireland, and there's over 2 million of displaced people that are going to come from this. I mean, it's just economic destruction. And the Zionists are laughing and smiling all the way, as they always do, getting away with it as usual. You just can't have peace in this world with these people controlling our governments. This has gone on for far too long. We pay for their decisions. We pay for their mistakes. We pay for their desires and their whims. And it's just, again, the billions of dollars we're talking about the illegals is even more. The illegals looks like pocket money in comparison to the amount of money Western governments have spent on the Zionist cause. So as a Muslim, we should ask, well, is there any opposition to this? And I think if you guys have been following me and following the world, obviously, I don't make this stuff up. Where is it coming from? Saudi? Egypt? Syria? No, they're continuing to push for the normalization of relations with Israel. There's no red line with these people. They don't ever say this is enough. They just keep on staying quiet, and sometimes they'll try to save face and they'll make a little statement or something to that effect. But in the end of the day, nothing. In fact, the UAE ambassador saw him on camera yesterday. He's the UAE, United Arab Emirates ambassador to the United States. He said there's no alternative to Trump's plan. No alternative. None. Not a two-state solution, not the Zionists to stop bombing these people. Nothing. No agreements, no discourse. There's no alternative. Take their land, let it be gone to the developers, and that's that. So this is the Muslim response from a place like UAE. That's not surprising, to say the least. And one thing that people need to understand to really fully grasp what's going on is the days of the military-industrial complex running the United States foreign policy are really over. They've been outbid. Now it's the tech companies, it's the developers. Yeah, there it is, exactly right there. That is the gentleman. It's the tech companies, it's the developers. These are the people that are having the big power now. And what's at stake for them is a peaceful, as they call it, stable Middle East. They want to develop this area. There's a lot of money built, and there are a lot of money, to be made in the infrastructure and the so-called improvements in that part of the world. If you look at every single one of these Gulf states, they all have what we call the 2030 agenda, which is nothing more than globalism. It's nothing more than Muslim 3.0, not even 2.0. So again, that's a lot of what's pushing, behind this. And Palestine had to fall. The people had to be removed to create this stability. This all aligns with the agenda. They don't want Muslim 1.0 in the region. We cause problems. We're not going to accept the consumer control grid. Muslim 2.0 and of course 3.0 will welcome it. And in fact, their governments already are. Last piece of interesting news I saw this week was one of my favorite people, wink, wink, Yasser Qadi. Anyone who's familiar with his work, no one defines our topic tonight more than him. Well, now he's promoting what they call the epic ranches. And we're going to get into what exactly this is. Classic trick that aligns, again, with what we're talking about today. This is a smart city, pretty much, that's going to trick Muslims into embracing the concept of 15-minute cities. You can walk anywhere, no need for a car, everything's within your distance. Of course, it starts off nice, but you can leave anytime. And then it turns into later, as we've seen the plans for these smart cities, to where, no, like COVID, you can't leave. In fact, they want to get you conditioned and locked in to these smaller, areas. Now, if you open up your checkbook to the tune of $325,000 to $550,000 with a down payment of $200,000. So just to get the house, you have to put $200,000 down. Needless to say, I don't think a lot of the Muslim community in the United States is going to be able to afford this. Now, while he's speaking on there, Yasser Qadi is making classic Masonic hand sign. I mean, you can't make this up. I called it immediately. I look for things like this. And I went to look at the comments on the article, and I saw, sure enough, there's Yasser Qadi standing there with the Masonic hand signal. I'll show you again here in a little bit what exactly I'm talking about. There it is right there. He just did it. You see the hands? Classic Masonic, and he's going to do it again. If you watch a lot of these guys speak, one of the key telltales is watch their hands, when they move. Andrew Tate does this. Donald Trump does this all the time. George W. Bush used to do this. Bill Gates does it. They all do it. And again, he is an agent, obviously, on the take. This is, thank you, exactly. And you watch the hands making those motions, exactly what we're talking about. This is again, part of that climate change, globalist, agenda, locking us in, eventually taking away our rights to drive cars. They want every automobile to be autopilot, driven by AI, where you're basically using it like an Uber service. They don't want freedom. And now you have a supposed leader of the Muslim community actively supporting and promoting this. So that was the news. So now we're going to start getting into the main bulk of tonight's topic. How to tell whether you're listening to agents grifters, and how to spot these Muslim 2.0 personalities. So firstly, we're going to break down what I've broken down into 3 different categories to specifically look for when you're trying to follow someone or learn from somebody in social media, particularly hopefully the young people can learn this. Now, the first classification is an outright agent. This is a person who's been groomed from the ground up and placed in a position of moral, spiritual, or intellectual authority over the Muslims. It doesn't have to just be Muslims. You see these people in crypto and investments, in Christianity, they've got them. They're all over the place. In fact, one of the biggest Christian apologists goes by the name of David Wood. He's a Jesuit as an educated person. Again, that's all I need to know. Jesuit, Mason, Illuminati, Zionist, really, is there any distinction there? You will always find when you go down the little highway, if you will, down the roads of their background, you'll see something like this. Usually these people will rise out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you never heard of them 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, millions in some cases of followers, and it's just like that. Here they are, boom. That's one of the most easy signs to spot that this person is an agent. They are supported by all sides from the controller. They fall into the RAND company, point number 1 that we talked about building the networks. In order to build the networks, you've got to have the leadership to lead these networks. You've got to have those people. They're literally shoved down our throats. And of course, their audience grows and grows and grows. And you'll notice when you watch them, I can spot them pretty quickly in most cases. They're very disingenuous, in the way that they act. They're playing a character. And sometimes they get banned. See, this is a trick I've seen so many good people fall for. Oh, he got banned by YouTube. They don't want you to see him. But guess what? They told you they banned him. So if you tell the child, don't open up that jar in there because there might be something bad inside, what is the child going to do? This is typical psychology. They're going to open up what's in there. Curiosity killed the cat, so to speak. They know by banning these people that it's going to get them even more famous. We saw this with Andrew Tate, was banned everywhere. Nico, someone we'll talk about later, banned everywhere. You see this all the time. This only serves to bring in more people than the original they already started off with. It's a very clever trick. So they'll give you about 80%, 90% truth, and they'll slip the falsehood, inside. These people will immediately or already be platformed by every Muslim podcast. We saw this with Andrew Tate. Anyone who platformed this individual, immediately they fall in this category. Or the little bit, some of the minor one we'll talk about later. But this is, again, it's instant. They're out there, boom, 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 boom. They're everywhere. They're on all these podcasts. Every time they go on a podcast, they increase their subscribers. They increase their views. They become more and more of an authority. The Muslim 2.0 starts here, not just in this country, but around the world, in Europe as well, in the Middle East. These people are rock stars. They're famous celebrities. They're getting contracts now on streaming platforms for $10 to $15 million. Some of these guys making millions of dollars a year streaming and supposedly representing Islam. This is where it all begins. They're the trendsetters. They are the influencers. Angering these guys, as we call it the Dawah Mafia, will cause you to be destroyed. If you anger them, your career will be wrecked. They will badmouth you. They will do videos on you. You'll have Muslims unsubscribing from you. We've seen this happen recently with a lot of people who dare to challenge any of their doctrines. They immediately get banned and all these other types of things. So if you're trying to get a career going, this is very detrimental to you. Now that brings us into the second type of people. These are the adapters. The adapters are people who probably, most of the time, from my experience, they had good intentions when they came in. But what they saw was that there's an establishment brewing here. And if I go against any of the things that they're saying, I'm ruffling the feathers. I'm ultimately going to be destroyed. They're going to destroy me. They'll humiliate me in a convention. They'll humiliate me on social media, in videos. They'll do videos on me, nonstop, boom, 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 taking you apart and turning people off of you. This is a key thing. So these people know, I can't say that. And this is how American government does free speech, where you can say it, but you also can lose your job from it. It's the same exact thing here. You go out, you criticize these people, you challenge what they're saying. Sorry, I had a technical issue, bumped into my laptop. I apologize. Let me set everything back up. Okay, sorry about that. I was using my hands and I bumped into the laptop, knocked my little iPhone station off here. So again, back to the point, if you ridicule them, your opportunity to grow, spread your message, this is how they control everything, top down. It's automatically like the sheepdog policing the sheep. After the sheepdog polices the sheep enough, the sheep will follow orders without the order even being there because they're so used to being barked back into line. So again, ridiculed, destroyed. Now, the third type, and I've seen a lot of these recently, these are reverts who are grifting. These are supposedly people who have converted to Islam and are basically out here trying to make money. I started spotting this a couple of years ago, more so recently, because they're getting a lot of attention because they realize, a lot of these people, that when you have a revert, particularly someone from the West, white, Caucasian, whatever may have you, you'll get a lot of reception because the Caucasian world, Western world, if we want to call it, has been an area that has not been receptive to Islam historically. So a lot of Muslims, the goodness in us, they're happy when they see this. Oh, mashallah, great, Islam is reaching the West. We will really start to see change in this world. And you see a lot of these grifters are particularly Western white women. And this is a problem, as we're about to see here in a minute. Now, in the early 2000s, I started noticing as social media was getting up, how these females were using this grift. In the 2000s, there was huge conservative movement. And there was a political candidate who went by the name of Sarah Palin. And Sarah Palin ran against Barack Obama as the vice president for John McCain. Her big shtick was she didn't know anything about anything. I mean, this woman talking was like listening to some high schooler or a drunk at the bar. I mean, her ideas of foreign policy were laughable at best. But she had guns, and she liked to fish, and she liked to hunt. So a lot of these conservative, rural Southern men, they loved this woman. And what happened from that was you saw a lot of women seeing this and going, interesting. So you started seeing massive amounts of scantily clad women walking around with shotguns and pickup trucks and mud and fishing apparel and all these things, grifting off of this. These women were doing absolutely nothing, and men were donating them attention, and money. We saw this same thing with the gaming community. Video games, when I grew up, was something that typically social outcasts did. They were the nerds, as they were called. And then video games became more and more mainstream, and you started seeing, again, these girls were attaching themselves to this for the sole purpose of extracting resources and money from men. Now we're seeing the same thing going on in Islam. We are seeing these women grifting Muslim men by going out. One famous one, I'm not going to name her name because I don't want to give her any more views or any more of a platform than she already has. But as I was talking about in my first point, you're not even looking for these people. They just come and they shove them on your feed. Because I look up Islamic content and Islamic related news, they're like, oh, here, watch this person. So I started seeing this person over and over and over again. I'm like, I've never even looked for this person. So I watched, and her Islamic knowledge is Chat GPT. She's even admitted that. She'll do the videos about the prayer and all these different things and how great it is to pray and all this stuff. And then you go and, as I suspected, I checked out her Instagram and her Facebook, and there it was. I mean, most of the pictures are, you could say not most, but half are normal. And then, about a third are more of her, you can say, than fabric. And she hasn't changed. She's still promoting sexuality. She's still promoting zina. She's still promoting all these things. And you see the comments constantly. Mashallah, will you marry me? Please marry me. I want you to be my wife. And you'll see all these things. Now, that may seem harmless on the surface, but what's happening here is, again, these women are covered with surgeries, makeup, plastic surgery. The one I'm referring to, her face barely even moves. It's, again, a distorted, sick, twisted image of beauty, which is indirectly going to affect the self-esteem of our sisters. And it's affecting what our brothers also are wanting, because our brothers are going to start identifying this with Islamic, sisterhood, with womanhood, and all these different things. And that simple, modest sister who's conservative, who carries herself with respect, is going to be seen as something old-fashioned or passé. They want a woman like this, very, very dangerous. These women are simply parasites, leeching off movements and the weakness of men to draw attention to themselves, to build fame, money, and notoriety. And it's Muslim 2.0 because, again, like I said, they're changing the beauty standards. They're changing the standards of what a sister should be, how a sister should carry herself. So many young people grow up watching this woman. Well, why isn't the sister I was thinking about marrying like this? I don't want her anymore. And it's just very, very unfortunate, because what you're going to see is more and more of our good women starting to emulate this. It's already happening enough as it is. It's going to continue to go there. So those being the three major categories of this to watch out for. You're obvious, your agents, your enablers who adopt the message, don't want to ruffle the feathers, stay the course. They don't want to be blackballed or castrated out, so to speak. And then you have your phony grifters who are just simply here to extract resources from weak and vulnerable Muslim men. Now we're going to talk about how to spot a lot of these people. Some of the things that I've noticed over the last few years they promote and they talk about. Some of the stuff we covered last week, we're only going to briefly touch on that just for the sake of this bullet list I've compiled. So firstly, again, emerging out of nowhere. That is the most obvious sign, huge followings. This shows that the algorithms are on their side. This shows the websites are on their side. As me and Sister Layla talked about in the opening, how many views we get taken away from any of our controversial videos. Not even controversial, just simply stating fact and the truth. They make it hard for you to get an audience. If this person has a big audience, it's because they want them to have a big audience. So always keep that in mind. Now, they're not all the same. They can be quite different. The controllers are smart. They know how to attack multiple sides. Not every one of these people will go after the same deviancies. No. This guy will do this area here. This guy will do it here. It's all very clever. They know who their target demographics are, and they do that. So what do they do and say? Well, one thing we talked about last week that needs to be covered endlessly is they will use the language of the left. Anytime you hear a Muslim intellectual, supposed scholar, an imam using these terms, they are either an enabler or adapter, or they are basically an agent trying to spread the division. You will see them using terms like we highlighted last week, a woman's right to choose. They will clean up the filth. They'll not say illegal immigrants. They will say migrants. They won't call them what they are. They will point to multiculturalism as a blessing. Again, we've talked about earlier in many of the past weeks, not all cultures are equal. Our Islamic culture, we believe, is superior. It comes from the Creator. No, am I going to acknowledge a Hindu culture as being equal. But you'll see a lot of them, the Hamza Yusufs, those type of people, always promoting this unity, plurality, multiculturalism, big thing. All religions are equal. Another key word they'll use is this one, and that's, anytime I hear this word, I cringe. Tolerance. You have to be tolerant. You have to tolerate the LGBTQ being shoved down your children's throats. You have to tolerate this person dressing or behaving like this. You have to be tolerant. We need a more compassionate, that's another big buzzword there, compassionate Islam. You need to be more, they even call them the compassionate imams. We now have open homosexual imams. Sister Layla was talking a few weeks ago about the lady imams that we are now having in the West, playing, and they're just pushing the buttons, seeing what they're going to get a backlash off of, how far they're ready to take it now. If they don't get a backlash, they're going to go a little bit further until they finally hit the wall. Then they'll retreat, and then they'll steadily start pushing again over time. You will start hearing them. We're going to talk about this one a little bit later. The feminism, and the prophet was a feminist. We're going to come to that here in a minute as well. A little bit more elaboration. I've heard that one a lot lately. As mentioned, they'll promote the lawlessness of illegal immigration, which is another strong leftist viewpoint. They will try to sell you, oh, every human has a right, and blah, blah, blah. The same stuff you'll hear from the Barack Obamas, the Hillary Clintons, the Joe Bidens. Same exact thing. Again, this is not about loving those people or hating those people. This is their goal of breaking down society and turning humanity into a digitally locked slave race. No culture, no identity. Everybody's fighting everybody while they're sitting up top robbing the house. And again, they will point and guide people to the Democratic Party. We just talked about that with Butch Ware and Jill Stein. We had imams coming out here, vote for this person. They're for the Muslims. They said, mashallah. They're for the Muslims because they said free Palestine. They will continue. Not only that, they will bring these people into the masjids. They will bring these people into the platforms, giving them an opportunity. And if you're a Muslim, doesn't know much about the world, you're coming into your own, you're young in particular, it's your first time to vote, and you see a prominent imam or religious leader putting their arm around, posing for a picture with one of these people, automatically your guard is down. You have trust for that particular person. I remember in our masjid here, they had brought in a professor. I looked him up. I didn't go because I knew his politics. Extremely left-wing. He brought his daughter in there to speak into the masjid, and I asked one of the guys who attended. I knew we were going to get there. I obviously didn't go, and sure enough, it was the same stuff. You know, women's equality and empowerment and all these different feminist issues, the multiculturalism, the tolerance, and all these other things, you know, that go on. And that's, again, one of the things I mentioned earlier. The prophet is a feminist. You will hear this a lot now, particularly from some of the females, you know, in these grifters, in these groups. Muhammad was the greatest, was the greatest feminist in human history. And what they're doing is trying to tie him with modern feminist causes. They will even lie. I've seen them do this, lie and attribute false hadiths, which don't even exist. These are not hadiths that even are weak. These are hadiths that don't even exist. One famous one recently, there was a woman on claiming to be a sister, and she said, remember what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ's last words were. It was, take care of the women, as he was crying and weeping 3 times. I had never heard of the hadith, but I'm not claiming to be a scholar or having all the hadith memorized, obviously. So I went and I looked it up, didn't remember the hadith, and sure enough, there were scholars on forums and message boards. This hadith doesn't exist. You know, so they're trying to take the Messenger of Allah and tie him into women being able to be free to be with men alone, all these things that are going on in the West. Yes, the Messenger of Allah was into women's rights, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained. And yes, he did give women the right to work, the right to choose their husband. He did have women's liberation, but that is completely different, obviously, than what they are trying to preach. And they don't even mind lying, because they know that most Muslims, unfortunately, are not educated, and they'll take everything like a sponge with a grain of salt, all in, just pouring into the brain, instead of actually going and looking it up. Another trick I've seen some of these people do recently is they'll play with the words and try to say there is no condemnation of the LGBTQ, even in the Quran. And this is just really funny how they tried to pull this off, but what they're framing it as is that, you know, the people of Lot were destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they wanted to rape the visitors of Lot, the angels. It was anti-rape. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clear in the way he describes homosexuality in numerous ayah, you know, in the Quran, they will play again with an impressionable audience and say there's no condemnation. Allah never says in the Quran that you cannot have a man marry a man. Well, I think Allah, you know, by deduction, pretty much clearly when he defines marriage and he talks about the role of the husband and the wife countless times in the Quran. He never mentions the role of the husband of the husband. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or have a PhD in some advanced chemical engineering to figure out that the Quran is pretty clear on this, but yet they still try anyway. We saw recently this Mufti Mink, who is another of these type of people. He was calling for men to be totally submissive to their wives, saying that if your wife wants you to quack like a duck, you should quack like a duck. That was his exact line. Now, for one, women ain't going to respect you if you're that weak. Women want a man deep down inside, whether they admit it or not, who's strong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given men the strength to lead the household and the community. Could you imagine Umar quacking like a duck for his wife, or Ali, or Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with all of them, doing such things, or God forbid, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even to think about it, behaving in such a manner. But yet this is a supposed scholar and a leader encouraging men to go out there and act like this to their wives, to be completely submissive, to give up all of your manhood and be totally weak. And just when I heard that, it was just so shocking. And I was getting into the business, a couple years ago, actually, with him, when he said this, was just, wow, eye-opening to say the least. We covered last week, one of their big shticks lately is the anti-white hate, targeting the white communities in the West. Again, the point of this is pure for grifting purposes, creating a boogeyman, going after the host culture, trying to grift them. These immigrants come in, they feel alienated, financially inferior to the host populations that they migrated to. And here's your enemy. Give us money, donate to this charity, we'll help you, we'll empower you. And of course, we see the results to that. Now, a big one, and this one is a very convincing sign here. They will tell you you must honor your leaders regardless of what they are doing. This is a big one when they defend the leaders in the Muslim/Arab world. They will twist the prophetic sayings here and basically turn this into blind obedience. Would the prophet approve of leaders bringing in porn stars like Iggy Azalea? Would the prophet, so they was telling them, approve of bringing in rappers to do performances with their shirts off and their pants below their waist, exposing their underwear and undergarments? I mean, I think we already would obviously know the answer to that. Would he condone worshiping the private parts of a woman, as we saw in one of the Saudi Arabian performances that the Entertainment Authority welcomed in? The woman was singing to people that her private parts were a goddess to be venerated and worshipped. I think we know the answer again to that. What Islamically was that the leaders, you shouldn't have knee-jerk reactions to them. Leaders make mistakes. They may make an error. You shouldn't try to overthrow a leader for any minor, deed that they have done. That's the heart of the saying. But what these people do is they twist this into you should accept every ounce of decadence and indecency and just blasphemy to our religion, to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just accept it. Our brothers and sisters are getting massacred. Should we send military aid? Follow the leader. He says no. They know more about the situation than you do. We should sit there and let them perish and lose all they belong to. That is a very big sign that you're dealing with either an enabler or an agent, depends on how they got in. We see what happens to detractors and dissenters in these countries. So if you're getting someone who's prominent, there's a few of them on YouTube who do videos in English, who live in some of these countries. This is always the core of their message. Obey, obey, obey. It's haram to question the leaders. Well, I just gave you a few of a many large size of some of these things that these leaders are engaged in. Should we follow it? I think we all know the answer to that. They speak also and act in ways, especially in public, that are un-Islamic. You will see them acting ignorantly, speaking profane. We've seen this from quite a few of those. I'm not going to name to not give them any more views than they already have. Some of the ones in the UK, who specialize in dawah, so to speak. And you see them out on the streets in England debating with people and just throwing the most vulgar insults, just unintellectual, immoral behavior that's a disgrace to our deen. And yet these people are 500,000 million followers, acting like children, acting like clowns, where you're supposed to be representing the deen of your creator. And this is the way that you're behaving. And that, again, is another example of these type of people, because they're not only about misguiding us, it's about making the kuffar hate us also. There's two things they're trying to accomplish here: getting us astray, imitating their bad behaviors and habits and ideologies, but also making the kuffar hate Islam, to where they will never take Islam seriously. They will never do an independent investigation because, oh, Islam's what that guy does. Islam is him. This is the manners of a Muslim. Big, big problem here. We have another example. Here's the domestic one I will name by name. This is a gentleman that goes by the name of Suhaib Webb. This gentleman here decided basically to platform a supposed Muslim sister who agreed to appear in Playboy magazine. He would later apologize only after obviously getting the backlash. Now, the sister is an attractive, girl. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, about that. She's a very attractive lady. The cover, she was wearing a lot of distasteful makeup style, almost trying to make her look worse than she naturally is. But she's on the cover of this magazine. What kind of optic is that for our young girls? Oh, I'm proud. There's a Muslim sister on the cover of Playboy magazine. It's normal. I can do that. She's empowered. She's a strong woman. Men often purchase these magazines based, obviously, who's on the cover. So there's a lot of men, they see this person on the cover, they're expecting when they open up, they're going to see everything that they paid their hard-earned money to see. There it is exactly, right there. And this just, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the silence on this guy, only a few criticized him, for endorsing this. And again, the sin is on any man who bought this magazine because they listened to him and her, obviously, promoting this. The sin is on him. You basically created another man to go out and do something immoral. You created an environment. You gave him the directions. You practically drove him and parked him in front of the store, needless to say. Now, his comment was really telltale. He said, "Did you read the article?" It was a very good article. Now, I don't, I'm a man growing up, and obviously I've known many men growing up, and needless to say, I don't think I've ever met a man in my life who bought that magazine for the great articles that are in there. I bet you couldn't even find a man outside of probably the editors and the people who wrote the articles who could even tell you the content of a single article that was put out there. But yet, here we see it again. She's Muslim 2.0. She sees no problem doing this. And when people attack her or him, they immediately look like the problem is with us. You chose to go into this magazine as a Muslim woman. Therefore, you are representing us all. Whether you want to, you consciously did this. So again, very distressing, there. And if you see this Suhaib Webb, he's at Lakers basketball games, front court seats. I mean, these aren't cheap. He's living the life, because when you serve this system, you're going to be having all the rewards and all the delicacies of the dunya opened up right for you. You will be rewarded. No ifs, ands, or buts. And another thing with these people, you'll notice the point here, they will never give you solutions or recommendations for anything. They will either grift off blaming the West, blaming the Western community, as I talked about earlier, particularly white Western Europeans or white Americans. They'll grift off of that, but they're never going to find a solution to making the Muslim community in the West stronger. Financial independence, community, all the things I'm talking about, we're going to continue to talk about with solutions later on in additional talks. They never do any of that. It's all basically about their institutes, their phony charities, and all these other things where they're selling you the knowledge. Not like what Sister Layla is doing here, where Sister Layla gives you the classes and she welcomes the donations, and please donate to her because she's doing God's work here. You have to have a lot of time and energy to run this. But no, they are charging huge fees for their courses, which you can get for free. You can buy the books for free. They're just enriching themselves and their pockets, one fundraiser after another. That's the strategy. And it all leaves one place for them having $5 million homes, $10 million homes, charging $30,000 for speakers' fees, while the majority of the Ummah is in a state that it's in right now. No solutions, nothing. And then lastly, we look at the other component of this, which is the social media influencers that come in. These particularly ones are attacking the young. We talked about the biggest one. We dedicated a whole video, in fact, to him. The biggest social media grifter and scam artist and phony Muslim revert in history, Andrew Tate. Now, when you mention Andrew Tate, there's another one. I call him the poor man's Andrew Tate. And that is a gentleman that goes by the name of Sneeko. Both these two came out to prominence around the same time. Andrew Tate obviously shot up, as we talked about in 2021. He was the third most searched man in the world in 21-22, coming out of the COVID lockdowns. He got huge during that period of time. And Sneeko was right there behind him in the underground, coming up. And he's another person, again, I never searched for this man. I never looked for any of his content. I never had an idea who he was. All of a sudden, he's everywhere. I'm not looking for it, and he is massive. He pops up out of nowhere. Again, going back earlier, just came up out of nowhere. And slowly, over the course of time, you started seeing do almost exactly what Andrew Tate did. He promoted the fitness, good thing. Promoted men to be masculine again, good thing. They always start you off with stuff that's good. You encourage men to work on themselves and be the best version of themselves. No one's got a problem with that. He comes across much more likable than Andrew Tate, who comes across as an egomaniac, not someone you want to have a conversation with. Sneeko comes across a little bit more humble. But what he started doing was he was promoting again what Tate did, the red pill version of Islam, which led to a lot of those converts I talked about in the Andrew Tate lecture that started coming into the masjid. You saw all these men were alienated and lonely. They were not having men in the homes in a lot of cases. They needed masculine figures and role models. They needed something to make their lives make sense. And here was Islam. They were on the right path. The shaitan was here trying to steer them off. So he promoted that red pill version of Islam. One of his famous lines was that Islam is the best religion. You get to be a pimp and have multiple wives. So never was it following the greatest human being that ever lived, the Prophet ﷺ, following his excellent moral example, the way he talked to people, his kindness, his smile, his sincerity, his patience, most importantly, how patient this man was. Following the deen of the very essence, the entity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created us, who gave us life. Following Allah's will. No. You get to be a pimp and have multiple wives. It's a man's religion. You get to be dominant. This is, again, the same exact thing I talked about a few weeks ago with Tate, that Tate was promoting. Same exact thing, copy and paste, promoting something that's a distortion, that just, all of the meaning of polygamy, the beauty in it, when it can help in certain situations, all smutted and made into a Western context. I had heard, and it's never been verified, but a lot of sources have said that, in fact, he had met with a lot of the prominent members of the UAE. And this was right before he platformed and became Muslim, which then took him to the next level. It opened up his audience to a lot of Muslims who were looking, again, teenagers particularly, for someone they could relate to. He's Muslim like me. He's successful. I want to be like him. We're going to get into what he's doing here in a second. But he got big initially as he did a video where he was encouraging white people in public for $1 to say the N-word. So all this is going to do, again, is cause racial division, because people are going to see that video or these videos without context, taking advantage of the racial history of this country and the tensions that are still lingering. And you're going to see a bunch of people saying the word and laughing at the end because they were encouraged to do so. And then you're going to have African Americans think, what's wrong with these people? Why are they doing this? Then you're going to have a reaction there, which is going to make this reaction back at that. And it just creates division and racism. This is how he got his career going, promoting this type of filth, not doing beautiful for humanity, trying to bring people together, find commonalities, try to resolve the past. No, continuing to feed off of division, polarizing people, putting them into camps. That's how he got going. He also worked with Mr. Beast. Very telltale here. If you're familiar with Mr. Beast, he's one of his hosts was a transgendered. He's targeting to the kids, normalizing these things. Seiko didn't work with him for long, but obviously the connection was there, which seems to facilitate his rise. His father is also part Ashkenazi Jew. He came from a wealthy family. Here we have, again, more red flags. Other things he did after his conversion. He had numerous porn stars on his show. And I also like to say, who's she? Oh, there's the name. Let me go look her up. What are they going to find? On a Muslim podcast, nonetheless. We see OnlyFans models promoting their channels and all these different things on there as well. And again, going back to this gutter, nonsense. One of his streams, he had girls kissing in the background while he was talking about Islam to the audience. You got two girls. He said, oh, he didn't know they were going to do that. Sure he did. Obviously, the thing went viral and got even more views for him. He's had guests on who he calls friends who have repeatedly blasphemed the Prophet ﷺ, have said some of the most vile and disgusting things about our Messenger ﷺ, who not even the worst of atheists probably have even said. And he's sitting right next to them. And the guy was drinking wine, with him. This is a man who's done this. You're allowing him to drink wine. You are a Muslim, supposedly. Now people are looking to you as a role model. Again, big, big problem. And again, why is he big? What is he offering? Is he offering any kind of great historical analysis, any kind of creativity, any kind of deep religious insight? I mean, is he offering is comedy is average at best? I mean, it's smut, pure smut, for the lowest common denominator. This guy just got 14 to 15 million, I can't remember the exact number, from one of these prominent streaming platforms just to stream on their platform. Massive money thrown at this guy. And he's reaching the youth. And a lot more humble than Tate, a lot harder to see. But when you look at the background, you see the same. And guess what? He was platformed by the same people who are the theme tonight. You look at all these imams in this country that put him on there. Some of them went and did dawah on the streets with him after his second week. They gave him that exposure, introducing him to the Muslim audience. Hey, he's a big star. He converted to Islam. What are they going to do? Let me go look up his channel. They're going to go look up his channel. What are they going to see? Girls kissing in the back, OnlyFans models, pornographic actresses. It goes on and on. A guy drinking wine. Next to him, they go look him up. What are they going to find? Videos of this man just outright nasty things about the Messenger ﷺ. Again, it's a circle. It just keeps going and going and going, leading you to more and more stuff. He was called out, obviously, for a lot of this behavior. And some of his responses were so profane, I cannot even say them here. Get off of my bleep. Why are you always on my bleep? And these different things that he said to brothers who generally thought he was a real Muslim, who were trying to reach him and point him in the right direction. Little did they know, he never was one to begin with. All this is one big grift for money and to generate the Muslim youth. But people tried. And they were finding these type of comments, very similar, almost word for word, to the stuff that Andrew Tate was saying. One of his famous ones on this was he played the role of the kind of the new revert who's learning Islam, but he's shocked at just how bad Islam really is to follow. And one of his famous comments was, "What? I can't get into real estate? That's haram too. I can't take loans. That's haram." It all came across as phony, artificial, completely scripted. So you're trying to tell me that getting into real estate, taking advantage of riba, and driving up the cost for the average family to afford a home should be good. And Islam is bad for being against such things. But that was the message he was producing. I can't have a girlfriend. What is this? And he would continue to act in that way, which was normalizing these objections. Instead of explaining why Islam says not to have a girlfriend and the beauty of marriage and the beauty of our marriage system, he's making it seem like it's over oppressive, bad, and all these things, while the Western way is much more fun, it's much more exciting. So if a Muslim youth is feeling alienated already in the West, and he's hearing this guy talk like that, what's he going to think? You know what? I feel that same way. He's right. Why should I be against dating? Why should I do this? Why should I not have a drink? Islam is oppressive. It takes away all the fun in life. Instead of using this platform, which if he was real, he would have done, to show the error of his ways. He'll show the error of how he lived as a kuffar, how he lived the Western lifestyle, how miserable you are, how it's slow path to destruction, and how Islam brought health, smile, and happiness. That's the message. But no, Islam is oppressive. And this is one of the more powerful ones that you're ever going to come across. And there's going to be much more like him. He will not be the last. He likes to play Halloween, and he goes and dresses up in his ihram and his thawb, and he goes to the Jummah prayer, and he does all those things. But then you look at what he's doing. Look at where he came from. Look at the background. Look at the publicity they've given him. Look how they platformed this guy. Everything in his life was laid out for him. They all made sure we knew who he was, whether you were looking for him or not. And now you can see the reason why. And now ask yourself, when you see the rest of these guys, is it the same? And I hope tonight that I've been able to make it pretty clear how to spot them. Now, granted, we could do this for weeks, going over detail after detail, but I hope I gave you pretty good coordinates to be able to start pinpointing these people and noticing if your teenagers, your children, or even yourself are watching them. Who are they? What do they really stand for? Where do they come from? And who do they really serve? And we'll close on that, Sister Layla, and take all comments and discussion.